Hi all, welcome to my video. I'm about to refinish my original condition Yamaha YG-1212. Now originally these bodies were finished with a poly finish. The first layer is a tinted sanding sealer, and it kind of picks up all the grain and the detail in the wood, and then over that is shot a lot of also green tinted poly, and it creates a sort of two-layer effect to the finish. It's not a burst, it's quite flat, and it's quite thick. And what happens after a while is with a ding, generally most things don't even trouble the finish, but as it gets closer and older and more dings happen, it starts to peel off. So if you look at the front of the body here, there's some cloudiness starting, so the finish took on a bit of a haze and it didn't come out with polishing at all. So no matter what I tried chemical polishing, Dremel, and using different grades of sandpaper, didn't really come out because it's been through a few different pick guards in its lifetime. There's all these different pick guard holes, and also there's just a build up of dirt in the finish. In terms of the finish, it hasn't really faded all these years. It's maintained pretty true to the color, but this is originally what it would have looked like here under the pick guard. In terms of the footprint of the tremolo, my plan is to fit a Guthrie G-1996T tremolo to this unit, and that has a square footing, whereas the original one has a round footing. So I'm actually going to have to make this a square layout, and then I'll stain that as well, so it looks like its original condition. As part of the modifications and putting in the Insidian Wire HSH custom solderless wiring kit, I had to take some material out of the body, and when I did that, it removed some of the conductive paint. So I'm going to have to get some conductive paint and cover up these areas so I can maintain the electronic shielding for this unit. And last of all, there's multiple chips on multiple areas on the outside of the front of the body, and you can see them here. So what they show up as is a tinted sanding sealed place next to where the strap pins should be. On the back of the body, it's seen some better days, so it's got some belt scratching. It's also got some scratching from removing the springs over and over again. So when I've tested pickups in this guitar, I just rip the springs out, and sometimes the pliers miss the springs or in the spring pulling, and that's caused these cuts in the back of the guitar finish. There's also a little bit of a difference in the finishing on the back. It got this sort of mottled appearance. So originally I thought it was some figuring in the wood, but this is a very straight grained piece of wood, and refinishing it will get rid of this motley appearance. And also I'm trying to preserve the serial number. Normally with a made in Taiwan guitar, there's actually a made in Taiwan transfer under the clear finish, or there's a made in Taiwan on the headstock. With this particular model, the serial number and the made in Taiwan is actually at the base behind the bridge on the back, and so I'm going to try and preserve this area so I can just maintain the identification and the original serial number here, just like I did when I refinished my other RGX-1203S. I've prepared a few guitars in my life, and I was absolutely not prepared for this. This was one of the craziest finishes to ever get off I've ever had to attempt. In terms of the finish, it wasn't very thick, the poly itself, but this sanding sealer, it just built up and just gummed up every single thing I threw at it. So this is after smashing it with some 80 grit on an orbital sander. What I found was you had to hit it at a certain angle for it to actually work, for actually to start pulling things out. So you can see where it started coming out first was this angled bit on this forearm contour on the top of the body. And I actually made quite a bit of progress here. And the sanding sealer just came off as this dull green powder over and over again. And I kept going, kept hitting it at that angle, and I was about to get more and more of the finish off, but it was really tough going. I'm talking probably 8 hours of work to get it to this point, and it seemed to have a couple of layers. So it had a layer that was quite easy to get through. So I'd say the poly layer, you're probably done in about an hour, something like that, hitting it. And then there's a dark green layer. The dark green layer here, it's really tough, really strong as well. You can sort of hit it with a file or something quite coarse, and it won't budge. It's only when you sort of peel it off at the right angle. And I did use a paint softener at this point to try and fix it up and to try and hurry that process along. So I threw absolutely everything at it, including solvents. Then you can see how just going near the edge, I'm making better progress than I am just hitting it from the top. So it started sort of clearing from the middle. And then you can see when I actually got first through to the real wood. Now this wood is extremely soft. So once you get through that final layer of sanding sealer, you have to stop because you're going to absolutely tear the wood up. And this is me just doing my cleanup after a couple of days of smashing it. And I probably could have left that bottom green layer on and just done an oil finish over the top. So if you just wanted to keep that figuring, and I thought that figuring looked quite good, I would recommend just taking off all those top layers of poly and that green spray and just getting back to that green sanding sealer. So and refinishing it, because that would have been an easier way to go. And I don't have many shots of the completely sanded finished body, but here's one where it was late at night. It was like 9 p.m. or something, and I had absolutely just run myself ragged. And you can see in the bottom left of the picture, there's still a bit of green just clinging to that wood. So just penetrated into the wood. So I'd had to work really hard to get that out. And then on the top here, this section wasn't completely flat. So it was sort of coming off the edges first, and then I had this last flat bit to work on, and the sides were extremely hard to do. So on this particular type of wood, the ends of the grain absorb colors differently and things differently, and because the surface originally was so uneven, I would have had to have kept going forever and ever and ever on the outside edge. But I eventually got there and got myself prepped, ready for the first load of stain. As a fan of Big D guitars and their refinishing, I picked up a few tips from his videos, and one of his tips was that there's different affinities for stains with guitars, and with guitars that use or have a black finish first, there's a tendency to not be able to get it out. So the first step was actually loading it up with some Crimson Guitars yellow water-based stain and just putting on a couple of coats here so you can see what it would look like with just the yellow applied to it. And I thought already it looked fantastic. Then I had run out of my original Crimson Guitars black, so I started using Angelus leather dyes, and this is the black one. And I used it undiluted, so I went straight over the top of the yellow with the Angelus black leather dye and then sanded it back. And you can see that it's gone into the grain, but it hasn't gone as far as it could have gone if I'd used it as the first layer. So it's a good controllable way to pick out all that detail in the grain without never being able to get it out. And then going back over the top with the yellow, you can see it's managed to pull up a lot of that figuring, picking out every single little scratch and everything in the finish. And I decided there was a bit too much black in there, so I took it back a bit further, and that's how you end up with this really beautiful, subtle finish in the yellow. And my plan for this guitar was always going to be yellow to green fade, or Iguana burst, as some people call it. This is me just loading the entire body up with yellow and then doing the Angelus black straight over the top, completely undiluted, and working from there. And then sanding. So in the sanding, it's all right if you take a bit of that yellow off, because we are going to go back over the top with the yellow again. And you can see the parts where I didn't sand completely through the finish. And here's just the yellow straight over the top of that black. You can see the edge of the guitar has actually absorbed a lot more of that black, and it was impossible to get out. So that's where the burst came in. That's after some more polishing and going over with the yellow again. And I thought at this point it looked brilliant. So when it was wet drying under there, it looked like I could have just left it as is. And this is one of the tricks with burst guitars. You do have to constantly evaluating where and how far you are going to take it. I was very happy with just this first burst. I thought the green and the yellow, they aren't really on the front anyway. They weren't really graduating. So I needed to create more of a contrast, and also I needed to blend more around the edges. And you have to balance that with how dark do I want the finish, and also how intense do you want that yellow to be, because this yellow is like any other color, it's additive. So the more yellow you put on this body, the more it tends towards an orange look. And that's something that doesn't come across very well in these photos, is that as you built the color up, it tended to go more orange. But also the camera is very bad at photographing this yellow. It's very bright in real life, like a daffodil, but on the screen it looks like an orangey yellow. And after a few goes and keeping on blending in and out the color, I was very happy with the going darker again with the green. So the color on this is very hard to capture on video, but it is very bright yellow. It's not like the sort of mustardy sort of looking color you can see here. And there's just some places where the green hasn't taken. So up in this corner, you can see there's a bit of a gradient there. Down here you can see there's a bit much down here. Now I could buff that out and re-yellow it, but I think I'll just sort of work on feathering the edges a bit, get them a bit darker. this horrible green sanding sealer. It doesn't stain, so it looks like a bad relic job at the moment. But what I'm going to do is just go over with the dark green again, just touch up some of these areas that I might have missed, and there's a couple of gouges in here that I have missed. Overall, I'm really pleased with it. I'm keen to get some of my own sanding sealer on this and get the Crimson Guitars finish onto it. Now these stunning stains I am using, they were I left these drippers on the top and that caused them to dry out. I just added some isopropyl alcohol and water back into it and it reinvigorated. So this thing cost me like $3 or something, and it's going to last me multiple guitars, I think. So yeah. I keep fiddling with it, keep touching it up. When you get this surface wet, it doesn't look yellow like it did before. It looks sort of banana yellow, which is kind of strange. So I imagine once I put some sanding seal on this, it's going to darken up a lot. There's the back of it. final assembly on the refinished Yamaha YG. I need to take the jack out of this one, and I also transferred back that earth extension I did in the first one. Originally this was all bare wood, and I used some conductive shielding paint to shield it, and then I'm probably going to add some copper foil just so I can touch the back of the pick guard, get a little bit of extra hum cancellation.